12 score and 10 years ago, a body of young and anxious men, bonded only by British inheritance and a mutual hunger for the fruits of Republican liberalism, blindly leapt into a future of unguaranteed civic prosperity, driven only by a spark of hope and a support from a power with a shared loathing for the royal liaison of heaven. The vote of independence, while truly revolutionary, was a narrow one of incredible contention. Had just a few more states, a few more legislatures, a few more men fallen victim to the intimidation of the mightiest naval power of the day, our path as Americans would have been one not as the union of self-governing states, but one of a permanent set of British colonies. Perhaps we may have eventually been granted economic and representative concessions from our sovereign, but we would have nonetheless spared the world of the liberal and fiery precedent that was the American Revolution and the birth of a state with an allegiance not to a monarch with a self-declared endorsement from God, but to its own citizens. This is a concept that the Western world respects as standard today, but was one controversial to its core at its conception. After staring down His Majesty with unbroken concentration and somehow, in defiance of our fate, managing to grasp with quill and ink of destiny, we used that very quill to defy the odds once more and scratched upon a leather parchment, "We the people," in order to form a more perfect union. A line glorified by history and envied by those within His creation who yearn for the values of liberty and justice. A line that curiously legitimizes its own government not in one body, but in a growing 330 million. Indeed, these framers negotiated a government of the people, by the people, and for the people, and indeed they could have set down that fateful quill and basked in the glory of their ideals unfolding in their presence, yet their toil was still incomplete. Guaranteed by that same quill and that same parchment is an ironclad set of rights belonging to you and to me. Freedom of speech, petition, religion, and privacy are values that the American men and women may think little of today, but were only secured through bloodshed and a lucky gamble not so long ago. Should the system of government, hard fought and hard won, for all of its blessings and yes, its flaws, stand through time as reliably resilient as the stars in the sky? Or should it perish to the gluttony of the outnumbered ideologues and the economically fruitful? 86 years ago, the hypocrisies embedded within the words, "all men are created equal," notwithstanding those shackled by physical and systemic chains, climaxed with the Declaration of Southern Secession. Only 336 seasons since the Continental Alliance against the British powers was formed, that very alliance fractured, seemingly irreparably, on the proposition of slavery. A bloody and costly war followed the 1860 presidential election, yet one that ended with an affirmation of liberal values. No longer could iron shackles juxtapose the ideals set out 80 years prior. 66 years ago, the United States celebrated the dawn of the 20th century with the apparently unstoppable expansion of its sphere of influence. The Second World War placed us in the curious position of having surpassed our economic fortunes prior to the devastating Great Depression. In this newly bipolar world order, the blossoming rivalry with the Soviet Union led us to a disturbingly ironic destination. Soon we found ourselves interfering with minor powers so as to create a world at the very least balanced between the Western and Soviet blocs. Democratic governments were toppled at our behest. All the while, we continued our never-ending tussle with the notion of equality at home. Suddenly, we fell ill to the same great power politics that drove us from the crown. Now, it was our turn to flex the world's greatest military might within our hemispherical backyard. Yet the moral arc of our nation never ceased its bend towards justice, however long it might be. 250 years since the ink from that fateful quill dried upon our very own daring declaration of destiny, we as Americans are left with a country technologically, economically, militarily, and culturally unfathomable to our forefathers. Horseless carriages roar down painted roads. We hold captive in our pockets a never-resting, always waiting, all-knowing, and nearly always subservient librarian and entertainer awaiting our command. And we've ordained ourselves as gods, prepared to rain hell down in a fiery spectacle of might upon this earth just at the turn of a key or at the request of a program. In this world, slavery and segregation are relics of the past. Marriage equality, regardless of race and sexual orientation, extends from the Atlantic to the Pacific Oceans. And women continue to chip, crack, and shatter the glass ceiling that is gender discrimination. Through these reaches of a more perfect union, the United States continues to stand on the marble pedestal that is our Constitution, ever perfected through the amending process. Though we have fallen prey to the pitfalls of a growing Western-style country, our indigenous and minority brothers will certainly attest, it is remarkably noteworthy that we are privileged to kneel and kiss the soil under the same flag as our framers. This presents to us now a certain crossroads on the future of our country and our brethren. 25 years ago began an avalanche of deregulatory policies and unbridled consumerism that begot us, yes, a bounty of innovation, but also a system of political bloodsport fueled by interests of outsized measure. We inherited the Pandora's box that was the World Wide Web, and with it an oligarchical class hell-bent on unleashing its digital fury upon us, the users, so as to amass a never-ending acceleration of power and influence. Only several years ago, the highest and most noble court from sea to shining sea endowed anthropomorphic blessings only before given by the Almighty onto big business and the right for these gods among men to vote with their wallets deep as the frozen-over abyss of Lucifer. No wonder the American worker drowns further within economic disparity each year, desperate for a gasp, if only one, of fresh air. No wonder we are enthralled in our hate for our brothers. No wonder we scream our desperation at those who are sacrificed to be scapegoated by the pedagogically elite class. No wonder the epic myth of the strongman has loomed his presence over our waning political trust for a decade. No wonder we lose just a little more of our goodwill from our foreign allies with each new year, with each new hawkish and deranged policy passed by the greatest nation to dare shout with boisterous pride to the heavens. No wonder the great American experiment has entered once more an era of cold and desolate uncertainty. But alas, our hope is not yet lost. We come equipped by our founding fathers the weapons to wield against titanic Goliaths, weapons with edges sharp enough to bring to mercy the once unstoppable systems of corruption, while those of power and of might will exhaust all resources to drill the woes of apathy within your own consciousness. You, the simple individual, will defend yourself, your brothers, and your democracy with your action. No election is of too little meaning, of too little importance to vote in. Yes, the coveted presidential and senatorial elections attract the primarily of media coverage, the lion's share at least. Yet it is the municipal contests that determine primarily the future of the citizenry well-being. Advocacy is a noble sport in any functioning democracy, as did the titans of emancipation and enfranchisement. So too can you passionately decree onto the streets and within the boiler rooms of bureaucracy your voice on political affairs. In this, the 21st century, one must labor to avoid the onslaught of sensationalized press reporting, yet by seeking outlets of honor and legitimacy, and by healthily balancing news intake, the American is further enabled to make those decisions founded on fact, not on adrenaline. Lastly, though this humble suggestion of lifestyle is by no means of less importance, indulge in your community. Perhaps our deadliest weapon in these times of isolation can be found en masse. While algorithmic gods remain persistent in their quest of tribalistic profit, finding our neighbors that share with us our passions, values, or perhaps only our residencies, acts as patriotic dissent against a system wishing to pawn us into damned disunion. 10 years from this day, what will us, as ancestors, have witnessed our descendants strive for? Will they remain united as one people, achieving unheard of milestones of innovation? Will our democracy strengthen and our justice system prevail? Will we remain one people under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all? What tale shall we have weaved for the Americans of the future? Shall they reflect on the struggle, on an uncertain time of extremity, and jubilate on our reaffirmation of liberal ideals? Shall they teach their children that we staved off the fangs of fascism, the teeth of tyranny, as we proudly declare of our ancestors today? Shall they look with intrigue to the coming 250 years of exceptionalism, just as that body of young and anxious men did themselves? That seemingly distant America remains dependent on us and what path we choose in this moment. So grasp, O brothers, that quill and ink of destiny. Scratch with it upon our nation the words of liberty and freedom, and reaffirm the realizations that our forefathers bestowed upon us. And on that day that we bond as brothers once more, on that day that we totaled the tyrants, defeated the despots, we shall light that torch of idealism with that familiar spark of hope and follow its glow into the dawn of a new day, a new year, a new century, a new millennium, and a bold new future.